What everybody talking about? And then once I found out,
saw the video.
I'm livid.
That reaction sums up what's happening across the NFL right now. After 16 years of breaking players' bones, spitting on opponents, and wrecking a teammate's career, Bill Romanowski is finally facing sentencing, and players are just finding out what it actually means. In this video, I'll break down the sentence and the league's reaction. The most hated man in football, Bill Romanowski, owes the United States government $15.5 million. That number landed on the internet in March 2025 after a U.S. magistrate judge recommended a default judgment against Romanowski and his wife Julie for unpaid federal income taxes, penalties, and interest going back to 1998. The Department of Justice had filed suit in 2023, alleging the couple neglected or refused to pay taxes across 7 different tax years and drained funds from Romanowski's supplement company, Nutrition 53, to cover personal expenses, spa visits, pet food, plastic surgery, rent for their adult daughter, groceries for their adult son. The couple filed for bankruptcy. They did not mount a defense. The court entered a default, and the internet lost its mind. But here's what the internet missed entirely. The reactions to Bill Romanowski did not start in 2025. They started decades ago, and they came from men who had stood across from him on a football field, men who had shared a locker room with him, and men who had watched him operate for 16 consecutive seasons and concluded that whatever line exists between tough and dirty, Bill Romanowski had not just crossed it, he had erased it so thoroughly that it no longer existed. ESPN once ranked him the 5th dirtiest player in all of professional team sports history, not just football, all professional team sports. And it was not a controversial pick. He played 243 consecutive regular season games as a linebacker, a record at the time of his retirement, with 265 total, including the postseason. He won 4 Super Bowls, 2 with the San Francisco 49ers and 2 with the Denver Broncos. He appeared in 5. He recorded 118 tackles, 39 5 sacks, and 18 interceptions. He was named to 2 Pro Bowls and was a member of the PFWA All-Rookie Team in 1988. Those are numbers that belong in Canton, Ohio, on a bronze bust with a gold jacket hanging in the lobby. But Bill Romanowski will never be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and the reasons why start with a kick to a defenseless man's head and end with a fist to a teammate's face, with a litany of spit, broken bones, steroid injections, racial allegations, and one of the most spectacular financial collapses in the history of professional athletics sandwiched in between. The NFL has seen players go to prison for murder, for conspiracy, for fraud, for dogfighting. Those cases generated reactions, teammates spoke, organizations issued statements, the league responded publicly. But when Bill Romanowski's $15.5 million tax judgment hit the news, the reaction from the football world was something far more devastating than criticism or condemnation. It was silence. And that silence speaks louder than anything anyone could have said. J.J. Stokes, the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver who had Romanowski spit in his face on Monday Night Football in front of millions of viewers, once said, "He's a loudmouth guy. That's just a lack of honor, a lack of respect. He lacks integrity and lacks a lot of things, and he tries to make up for it with performance enhancers. Obviously, his parents didn't raise him right." Former NFL head coach Mike Ditka watched a compilation of Romanowski's most violent plays and delivered a judgment that cut deeper than any fine the league ever levied. Most of your greatest hits were from behind, out of bounds, or after the whistle. Hall of Fame quarterback Dan Marino watched the same footage and called it sad. And Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver who ever lived, a man who shared a locker room with Romanowski for 6 seasons in San Francisco, was subpoenaed to testify in a courtroom about one of Romanowski's acts of violence and told a jury, under oath, that Romanowski crossed the line. Those are the reactions in response to 16 years of escalating violence that accumulated like a rap sheet, except, remarkably, no criminal charges were ever successfully prosecuted. To understand how a 4-time Super Bowl champion ended up owing the government $15.5 million while the entire NFL watched in silence, you have to start on the field. And you have to start with what he did to the people standing across from him, because the career itself, viewed in isolation, stripped of every controversy and every fine and every incident, is extraordinary by any measure. Romanowski was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in the 3rd round of the 1988 NFL Draft out of Boston College. He played 6 years with the 49ers, 2 with the Philadelphia Eagles, 6 with the Denver Broncos, and 2 with the Oakland Raiders. He appeared in 5 Super Bowls across 3 different franchises and won 4 of them, a number that puts him in the company of players whose names are synonymous with winning. He started 222 of his 243 regular season games and added 22 postseason appearances to his resume. Coaches valued him him for his film study, his sideline-to-sideline pursuit, his consistency, and his willingness to do things that other players would not. Teammates benefited from the fear he created in opposing offenses, because every running back and tight end who lined up near Romanowski knew that contact with this man carried a surcharge of pain and humiliation that went beyond what the play required. He was by every measurable metric an elite football player, and by every human metric, he was a walking catastrophe. A trail of broken bodies. The list of things Bill Romanowski did on a football field between 1988 and 2003 does not read like a disciplinary file. It reads like an escalation. In 1991, during the playoffs, Romanowski, by his own later admission on 60 Minutes, intentionally broke a running back's fingers during a pileup. He would later acknowledge that eye pokes, finger breaks, and other acts of covert brutality beneath the pile were part of his deliberate tactical repertoire, tools in a toolbox of violence deployed routinely, methodically, in the spaces where no camera could reach and no referee could see. These were not accidents, they were calculated, premeditated acts of assault committed under the cover of a football game, disguised by the controlled chaos of 22 men colliding on every snap. He admitted to all of it. Years later, on national television, sitting across from Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes with the cameras rolling and no legal obligation to confess. In 1995, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, he kicked Arizona Cardinals fullback Larry Centers in the head while Centers was lying on the ground after a play had ended. Ejected. Fined for $500, a number so insignificant relative to his salary that it functioned less as a punishment and more as a tacit endorsement that the NFL would tolerate almost anything as long as you could still play on Sunday. In 1997, during a preseason game with the Denver Broncos, he delivered a helmet-to-helmet hit on Carolina Panthers quarterback Kerry Collins that shattered Collins' jaw in multiple places. Fine, $20. Collins missed weeks. Romanowski later called it one of his best hits. Then came December 1997. Monday Night Football, Broncos versus 49ers, the entire country watching. After a pile-up during a game that had turned physical and chippy, Romanowski spat directly in the face of San Francisco wide receiver J.J. Stokes. Not near him, not at his feet, not in the general vicinity of his helmet. In his face, deliberately and unmistakably, with the cameras rolling and millions of American households watching from their living rooms. The footage was replayed on every sports broadcast in the country, and it became the single defining image of Bill Romanowski's career. In 1999, Romanowski racked up $4,500 in fines for 3 illegal hits, plus a punch thrown at Kansas City Chiefs tight end Tony Gonzalez during a game. In a separate contest, he threw a football at New York Jets linebacker Brian Cox, hitting him squarely in the groin. An act so gratuitous and so far removed from anything resembling competition that it would be funny if it were not part of a pattern that had been building for a decade. The Denver Post later named him the head of their all-dirty team and wrote a line that summed up the consensus of everyone who had ever watched him play. When a teammate says you're dirty, the contest is over in 2002. Now with the Oakland Raiders and playing at 36 years old with a body held together by designer steroids and sheer force of will, he ripped Tennessee Titans running back Eddie George's helmet off during a game. And beneath all of these individual incidents, the racial dimension created its own separate layer of scrutiny that followed Romanowski throughout his career and beyond. In August 2000, Sports Illustrated published allegations from an unnamed source, later connected to former teammate Martin Harrison, claiming Romanowski had used a racial slur and had suggested a white teammate use diet pills as the only way to compete with black players. The allegations surfaced during the same period as his Fennermine fraud indictment. Romanowski called the article an absolute lie and baseless journalism. His attorney echoed the denial. No league discipline followed, and Romanowski has consistently rejected every accusation of racism throughout his career. But critics looked at the pattern. Centers, Stokes, George, all black players on the receiving end of his most notorious and most degrading acts, and drew their own conclusions. Wide receiver Chris Carter publicly claimed Romanowski once threatened to take him out during pre-game warm-ups. Romanowski's response? He called Carter a mind reader and admitted he had threatened somebody in every football game he had ever played. A Hefgate columnist put the public sentiment into one sentence. It's guys like Romanowski who disgrace the NFL. 16 years, tens of thousands of dollars in fines, at least one ejection, broken jaws, broken fingers, spit in faces, footballs to groins, helmets ripped off heads, and through all of it, through every single one of those incidents, not one suspension, not one ban, not one meaningful consequence that forced Romanowski to change his behavior. The league tolerated Bill Romanowski because he won football games, because he played every single snap, because he never missed a game, and because the system that was supposed to police his behavior had decided, consciously or not, that the value he brought on Sundays outweighed the damage he inflicted on everyone around him from Monday through Saturday. That arrangement held for 16 years, until August 24, 2003, when he did something that even the NFL's bottomless tolerance for violence could not absorb. The punch that ended a career. The Oakland Raiders were running a full-contact drill at their Alameda facility, 2 days after a preseason loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Head coach Bill Callahan ran a notoriously intense camp. Full-contact work was not an occasional feature of Raiders practices, it was the culture. The practice was held behind a 10-foot chain-link fence draped with tarps, shielding the field from the outside world. Whatever happened inside those fences stayed inside those fences. Second-year tight end Marcus Williams, 25 years old, 6'4", 250 pounds, a special teams contributor who had earned an AFC championship ring the season before when the Raiders went to the Super Bowl, was in motion as part of the play. Quarterback Rich Gannon was under center. Williams blocked Romanowski, driving him toward the sideline as the play developed. The whistle blew. The play was over. What happened in the seconds after that whistle would become the subject of a 3-week jury trial and one of the most scrutinized acts of violence in the history of NFL practices. According to eyewitness testimony at trial, Williams disengaged and raised his arms, the universal signal for "we're done." Romanowski grabbed him by the jersey. Williams tried to pull away. Romanowski shoved his helmet violently, jerking Williams' head backward. The helmet flew off. And in the instant that Williams' head snapped forward unprotected, Romanowski delivered a right uppercut directly to his exposed face. Williams collapsed unconscious. Romanowski stood over his motionless teammate screaming, "Don't ever F in hold me. Don't you ever F in touch me." Raiders teammate Ryan Prince described the sound of the punch as gross, a really unnatural sound. He said Williams was out, completely silent, completely still, and called it the most violent thing he had seen in his entire NFL career. Bruce Allen, the Raiders' director of pro personnel, said in a deposition that he had seen thousands of training camp fights across decades in the game, but nothing like this. Nothing where a teammate's ability to make a living was put at risk by another teammate's fists. The punch shattered Williams' left eye socket, chipped a tooth, left him with double vision, brain injury symptoms, depression, flashbacks, and post-traumatic stress that would haunt him long after the physical wounds closed. His NFL career: 14 games played, 11 special teams tackles, an AFC championship ring earned in the 2002 season when the Raiders went to the Super Bowl, was over at 27 years old. Williams called the Alameda police immediately after the incident, a decision he later said he regretted, not because it was wrong, but because calling the cops on a teammate in the NFL carries a stigma that follows you. Players are expected to handle things in-house. Going to the police is seen as a betrayal of the locker room code. The Raiders fined Romanowski one game check, about $58,000, and took no further action. No suspension, no release, no public condemnation from the organization. Romanowski apologized publicly, calling it a classless move. He phoned Williams offering help, but did not leave any contact information. On October 29, 2003, the Raiders waived Marcus Williams. The victim was cut. The perpetrator stayed on the roster. No criminal charges were ever filed against Romanowski for what he did to Marcus Williams on that practice field. Williams sued for $38 million for battery, negligence, emotional distress. The trial began March 1, 2005, in Alameda County Superior Court before Judge Cecilia Castellanos. 13 days of testimony spread across 3 weeks. The jury watched the video of the punch at least 17 times. Williams told the courtroom, "I'd been in some tussles, but that ain't what this was. That wasn't a fight. It was an assault." He looked at the jury, "I'm a grown man. If this was just a fight, we wouldn't be here." He showed the jury game film of his special teams tackles and blocking, demonstrating that he was not some fringe player hanging on by a thread. He was a contributor, a young man with years of football ahead of him, all of it erased in a single swing. His attorney, James Brosnahan, called it brutal violence beyond the rules of football. Romanowski's attorney, Jeffrey Springer, countered that it was mutual combat in the hyper-violent world of the NFL, that Williams was pursuing a payday and Romanowski had made one mistake on one play. He called his client an outstanding player and expressed sorrow, but argued that what happened was an occupational hazard in a sport built on aggression. The Raiders' attorney stated flatly that the team was not responsible for what he did. Romanowski himself took the stand calmly, sharing his underdog backstory and admitting the punch while framing the confrontation as mutual. The trial's most significant moment came on March 16, 2005, when Jerry Rice took the stand as the final witness. He had shared a locker room with Romanowski for 6 seasons in San Francisco, who had watched him evolve from an eager rookie into one of the most feared and most penalized defenders in the game. Rice testified for approximately 10 minutes, and every word carried the weight of a man who had spent his entire career doing things the right way. He told the jury that Romanowski crossed the line, that football is a violent sport, but there are boundaries within that violence, and that punching a teammate in the face is not within those boundaries under any definition of the game. I can't condone what he did. I know I would never do that. I would never jeopardize a player like that. Rice described Williams as a player who contributed, who made plays on special teams, and said there was a good possibility he would have been picked up by another team had the injury not ended everything. The jury found Romanowski liable for battery but rejected malice. No punitive damages were awarded. No future medical expenses. The verdict: $340,300 in lost wages, $40,000 in medical expenses. They settled for $415,000 2 months later, adding $75,000 that acknowledged the original verdict had failed to account for pain and suffering once liability was established. The engine that built and destroyed everything. The thing that makes Romanowski's story more complicated than a villain narrative is that the same force that produced the violence also produced 4 Super Bowl rings, 243 consecutive starts, and one of the most decorated linebacker careers in NFL history. And he will tell you exactly where it came from.
I was a kid that on some level was floundering a little bit. I was a good athlete. Good to great athlete.
He grew up in Vernon, Connecticut, listening to his parents worry at the kitchen table about making ends meet. Second mortgages, college tuition for 5 kids, vacations that consisted of piling into a station wagon and driving to Ohio. Nobody in that house had a blueprint for getting to the NFL. The turning point was a Sports Illustrated article about Herschel Walker: push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, sprints, clean eating. Romanowski read it and started that same night.
And I started doing that every single night. And I remember the first night, I think I was able to do 11 push-ups total.
11 push-ups? That was his starting point. Within months, he was doing hundreds every day. He hung from his garage rafters doing pull-ups, starting from 0. While his friends drank at parties, he walked around all night with a beer that had 2 ounces gone from it. There was a voice in his head asking one question: is this going to get you where you want to go? Whenever the answer was no, he walked away. At Boston College, the coaches put him in a yellow jersey, red shirt, sit out, wait. Every other freshman in yellow was joking about parties. Romanowski walked onto the field and started crying. He looked at the maroon and gold jerseys on the other sideline and swore he would be there within a week. He fought offensive linemen. He sacked Doug Flutie. He intercepted everything. When linebackers got hurt during the first game, the head coach waved him in.
But my head coach looked at me and then looked away and then looked back at me and gave me one of these.
By the 5th game, he was starting. He graduated with a business degree because he watched other athletes major in sociology and thought, what happens when football ends? The 49ers drafted him in 1988. He won back-to-back Super Bowls in his first 2 seasons. Then Ronnie Lott pulled him aside in a film room and told him that if he ever let anyone push him without consequences, Lott would handle it personally. Lott told the entire room that football was a game of respect, and if you let somebody punk you, they would punk you right out of the league.
To play linebacker in the National Football League, you know, I had to take myself to a dark place, you know?
He spent 6 years with the 49ers, chasing Jerry Rice to the end zone on every practice play so the coaches would notice. He was traded to the Eagles for 2 seasons, then signed with the Broncos in 1996, where his game reached its peak. He worked with Olympic track coaches, overhauled his nutrition, and set a goal to make the Pro Bowl. His first year in Denver, he was named first alternate. He trained relentlessly, and on a cruise, he got a phone call from head coach Tom Coughlin telling him he had been selected.
And back then, the Pro Bowl was the week after the Super Bowl. So I had a month. I trained my ass off.
He won 2 more Super Bowls with Denver. He recorded a career-high 75 sacks in 1998, and the reason he was still performing at that level deep into his 30s, as he confessed on 60 Minutes in 2005, was because he was using Balco-supplied designer steroids, THG, human growth hormone, and synthetic testosterone to recover faster, evade tests, and extend a career that should have been over years earlier. He later wrote in the Players Tribune, "The more violence and nastiness I played with, the more I was feared and hated by opponents, and loved by my coaches, teammates, and fans. By the end, his brain was giving out. 20 documented concussions, a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke at 37 years old while he was still suiting up and playing in NFL games. He drove home from the facility one day after a particularly brutal practice and did not know where he lived. The house was 15 minutes away on a straight road, and he drove around in circles for 30 or 40 minutes, confused and frightened, until the route finally came back to him. The TA itself was even more terrifying. His brain and his eyes short-circuited. Everything went black for a second, maybe a second and a half, and then came back. He told nobody, not the trainers, not the coaches, not his wife. Because at 37 years old in the NFL, Any sign of vulnerability is an invitation to be replaced by someone younger, cheaper, and healthier. The sideline, as he has said, represented failure, and Bill Romanowski did not accept failure under any circumstances, even when the consequences of continuing were catastrophic and permanent. The truth about the insane sentence. After football, Romanowski founded Nutrition 53, a supplement company, in 2006. He published a best-selling autobiography. He acted in films. He coached high school football. He spoke publicly about concussions and brain health. But legal trouble was not new to this household. Back in 1999, both Bill and Julie had been charged in a phentermine prescription fraud case. Julie faced 8 felony counts. Bill was later indicted on 4 felonies. Prosecutors said he could face 2 to 9 years. He went to trial and was acquitted after same-day deliberations in 2001. Julie's charges were dropped. He dodged that bullet. The DOJ's 2023 lawsuit alleged the Romanowskis had not just neglected their taxes, they had systematically avoided them while living off a company the government described as an alter ego. The filings detailed a breathtaking portrait of personal spending disguised as business expenses. Over 170 visits to nail salons, hair salons, and day spas charged through Nutrition 53. Rent for their adult daughter paid from company accounts. Groceries for their adult son, veterinary bills and pet food for the family animals, chiropractor appointments, personal medical procedures, all of it flowing through a company that was supposed to be manufacturing and selling nutritional supplements, not functioning as a personal checking account with a corporate name on the letterhead. Meanwhile, 7 years of federal income tax obligations that had been accumulating interest and penalties since the late 90s, sat entirely untouched, ballooning into a figure that would eventually reach millions. Their response was not a defense. It was a series of bankruptcy filings with timing so transparent it practically announced its own purpose. Nutrition 53 filed Chapter 11 in late 2023. Then the couple filed personal Chapter 11 on April 29, 2024, one day before a critical hearing in the tax case. One day, that filing was later converted to Chapter 7, full liquidation in February 2025. Despite every extension the court offered, despite every opportunity to file a brief or present evidence or make any argument at all about why they should not owe this money, they submitted nothing of substance. The court did what courts do when defendants refuse to show up. It entered a $15.5 million default judgment recommendation by Magistrate Judge Peter H. Kang, not because the government proved its case against fierce opposition, but because nobody showed up to oppose it at all. The government is now seeking to seize assets tied to Nutrition 53 and any other business interests the couple may hold. Now compare that to NFL players who actually received criminal sentences. Aaron Hernandez got life without parole for first-degree murder. Ray Caruth got nearly 19 years for conspiracy to murder his pregnant girlfriend. Robert McCune got 5 years in federal prison for defrauding the NFL's healthcare plan. Wendell Smallwood got 18 months for COVID fraud. Those are sentences, criminal sentences, handed down by judges to men who stood in courtrooms and heard the words that changed the trajectory of their lives. Romanowski's situation does not belong in that category. It belongs in the category of financial ruin, which is devastating in its own way. The contrast between who Romanowski was on the field and where he stands today is stark enough without any exaggeration. A man who earned millions playing the sport he loved, who won 4 Super Bowls, who played more consecutive games than any linebacker before him, who chased Jerry Rice to the end zone on every practice play because he could not stand the idea of anyone outworking him, is now in Chapter 7 bankruptcy. His company has been seized. His finances are in liquidation. He owes the government more money than most people will earn in a lifetime. And the people who spent 16 years watching him operate, the teammates who held players-only meetings about his behavior, the opponents who called him a disgrace, the Hall of Famers who testified under oath that he crossed the line, said nothing when the number dropped. Not because they did not care about what happened to him, but because they had already said everything there was to say years ago, when the damage was being measured in broken bones and shattered careers rather than dollars and cents. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.